What does this tell us, particularly about Trump's attitude and the Trump administration's attitude? Has he finally woken up to the threat that Putin poses, and is that likely to shift the emphasis that he places on Putin's responsibility when it comes to work towards that ceasefire? 0345 6060 973. I'm joined by Jimmy Rushton, foreign policy and security analyst, who's in Kyiv. Good afternoon to you, Jimmy.
Good afternoon.
Your reading of this?
I pretty much agree with you. It is Ukraine's diplomats have done a particularly good job because the language in the agreement mirrors Ukraine's understanding of this war, which is absolutely truthful. It's the full-scale Russian invasion of their country, and it has been a battle to get the Trump administration to understand this. As you said earlier, they were previously talking about it in the terms of Russia-Ukraine conflict when they proposed a resolution at the UN a few months ago. So for the Ukrainians that I've spoken to in the government they are happy with this. They view it as a genuine partnership for future reconstruction. They don't view it as exploitative. And the prospect of potential further US military aid is very welcome. There was a foreign military sale that was authorized, $50 million worth of military aid. We don't know exactly what it is, but it was posted on the congressional website last night. So we are seeing some military
from the US to Ukraine, you mean?
From the US to Ukraine, yes, absolutely. A foreign military sale being authorized. So that's a very good sign, and Kyiv will be very happy about that as well.
Donald Trump throws out so much flack, doesn't he? That it's hard to know which bit to follow, I guess. But do you think in this we're starting to see some of that smoke clear and maybe steps towards a more realistic approach to talks on a ceasefire?
I don't necessarily think we're any closer to talks on a ceasefire. I do think that this will help stabilize the relationship between Ukraine and the US, because this will give Trump something to wave at his base to say I'm the greatest deal maker in the history of the world, which he always likes to pretend he is. And for Ukraine, again, it does tie the US to Ukraine. In a way,
because it creates mutuality, and
it creates exactly. And Ukraine is potentially an incredibly wealthy country. It's got massive mineral resources. It's important to note as well that the previous drafts of this agreement were talking about potentially Ukrainian infrastructure, power infrastructure, particularly being included, and that isn't included in this deal. So I would say that's another win for the Ukrainian diplomats. It's just mineral resources and oil and gas.
Why do you think Trump took the position he took at the beginning? And he hasn't explicitly reneged on it, has he? The position that was so favourable to Putin's ambitions.
To be honest, understanding what goes on in Donald Trump's mind is always difficult. I would say that Trump genuinely believes he has some form of friendship, some form of relationship with Putin. And this is this goes back to his first term, that he does seem to have an affinity for strongmen. He also has an affinity for Kim Jong-un. We saw that as well. So, he does seem to think that he understands Putin. He seems to think that Putin respects him. He does apparently genuinely believe that this war, or at least the full-scale invasion part of this war, would not have started if he was in office. And I don't believe that, but he definitely does. So, he's also very transactional. And now Ukraine has given him something that he can, say, hey, we're making a lot of money, or we will potentially make a lot of money out of these deals in Ukraine. So, that will probably get him on side, at least temporarily.
He was in the clip I heard this morning where he was saying, and forgive me, I can't remember where it came from, that originally, presumably an American broadcaster. He was saying that in that conversation in the Basilica on Saturday with Zelensky, he said to him, come on, this is the deal to do. You can't just leave America hanging after we've given you all of this money. I mean, he exaggerates the amount of money, but all of this money that we've given you. And even the tone as he described the conversation seemed more emollient. Is it possible that was the clinching moment in that Basilica?
I do think the fact that Zelensky had a chance to talk to Trump without any of the provocateurs that typically surround him, people like J.D. Vance particularly, and others, was definitely helpful, because Zelensky is generally quite persuasive one-on-one. And the Ukrainians were, even after the bust up in the Oval Office, the Ukrainians would have still signed the agreement there and then. So the Ukrainians have been prepared to sign this for quite a while, but I definitely think that helped. And I think that the personal touch often goes quite a long way in diplomacy. I think people underestimate it, to be honest.
Yeah, there was talk, wasn't there, in the morning ahead of that meeting and that funeral and that extraordinary picture, that people were talking, myself included, about brush by diplomacy, where you have a brief chance to talk about something. But this wasn't brush by, was it? This was two chairs. It looked almost confessional in nature, I thought, when I saw it. It was an unusual scenario, wasn't it?
It was very unusual. But then, what is usual in these kind of times? I'd say that for Trump and Zelensky, obviously the circumstances as well, being in that amazing building at that event, the funeral of a very highly respected religious figure, hopefully, probably, maybe concentrated their minds on coming to some form of agreement and being a little bit more conciliatory rather than shouting at each other, because it wouldn't have been a very good look if they started shouting at each other inside St. Peter's.
I was there, and the music was absolutely mesmerising. So maybe they were both, I don't know, in a calmer frame of mind for the conversation. Just a word before you go, Jimmy, on how this is no hindrance to Kyiv's EU ambitions. Very significant, that, isn't it, for Ukraine?
Absolutely. And obviously, if we think back to where this all began with Euromaidan and Yanukovych refusing to sign an agreement which was overwhelmingly supported by the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian parliament, and then reacting, murderously to Ukrainian protesters in the Maidan. This whole war, this whole conflict has been about the ambitions of the Ukrainians to move away from Moscow's orbit and move towards Europe. So Ukrainian people would never accept an agreement with the Americans which stopped them joining the EU. And obviously Zelensky knows that. I think the Americans know that as well. That they're not interested in actually stopping the Ukrainians joining the EU. That's never been Washington's goal, even under Trump.
They wanted the deal. They wanted their hands on the minerals and the oil. Yeah. Thank you, Jimmy. Great to talk to you. Jimmy Rushton, foreign policy and security analyst, joining us from Kyiv.